the time, Malcolm was going everywhere.
It was Malcolm who sparked the growth of the nation all over the country. He was in demand. Nobody was asking for Elijah Muhammad to speak. They were asking for Malcolm to speak. And naturally, Malcolm got more involved with the civil rights struggle. And his argument became more an argument that you would expect from someone who was in the civil rights struggle than you would for someone who was following the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
The 60s showed us the white man in the image that the Nation of Islam had cast him in the image of a brutal person, you know, turning the dogs out on the demonstrators, using the fire hoses. So all this helped the Nation of Islam's charge against the white race. And made it possible for the Nation of Islam spokesman, for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad spokesman, Malcolm X, to get the press, to get the camera on him, and to state what he had confidence in that was an alternative, and that was separation.
As Muslims, we believe that separation is the best way and the only sensible way, not integration. But on the other hand, when we see our people being brutalized by white bigots, white racists, we think that they are foolish to allow themselves to be beaten and brutalized and do nothing whatsoever to protect themselves. If a dog is biting a black man, the black man should kill the dog. Whether the dog is a police dog, a hound dog, or any kind of dog. If a dog is fixed on a black man, when that black man is doing nothing but trying to take advantage of what the government says is supposed to be his, then that black man should kill that dog or any two-legged dog who fixed the dog on it.
When Malcolm talks, or one of the Muslim ministers talk, they articulate for all the Negro people who hear them, who listen to them, they articulate their suffering. The suffering which has been in this country so long denied. That's Malcolm's great authority over any of his audiences. He corroborates their reality.
I was probably about 14 years old, and I was involved in demonstrations at this construction site. The community was demanding integration of the workforce. We realized that Malcolm had come to watch the demonstration. When my shift changed, I went across the street to talk to Malcolm. We had quite an argument that morning. And he tried to explain to me what was wrong with my laying down on the ground in front of a cement truck. And Malcolm said, if these are people who could lynch black people, murder black children, enslave people, why couldn't they run over somebody with a truck? And he said, oh, they'd say it was an accident. He'd say, oops, my foot slipped. But you'd be just as dead. And when he left, and I turned around to go back across the street, I went back and I got on the picket line, but I never laid down in the street in front of a truck again.
We were sitting across this table at the Shabazz Frosty Cream and talking about race relations in America, and Malcolm at one point said, okay, what's your solution? And he was not asking me for advice. He just wanted to sort of put me on the spot for a moment, I think. And I was, at the time, under the spell of Dr. King and his notion of the beloved society, which would be colorblind, in which color would not be a disability for anybody. It wouldn't disappear, but it wouldn't be a disability. And Malcolm just kind of looked back at me and said, you're dreaming. I haven't got time for dreams.
The goal of Dr. King is full equality and full rights of citizenship for Negroes.
The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to give Negroes a chance to sit in a segregated restaurant beside the same white man who has brutalized them for 400 years. The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to get Negroes to forgive the people who have brutalized them for 400 years by lulling them to sleep and making them forgetting what those whites have done to them. But the masses of black people in America today don't go for what Martin Luther King is putting down. As you said in one of your articles, it's psychologically insecure or something of that sort. I forget how you put it. But you didn't endorse what Martin Luther King was doing yourself.
I do not reject his goals of full integration and full equality rights for American citizens. Do you reject these goals?
If you don't think that he's walking on the right road, I'm quite sure you don't agree that he'll get to the right place.
We were aware or felt that it was somewhat dangerous to be too closely associated to Malcolm. He was saying some pretty rough things, particularly about whites, and those of us who wanted to keep peace with the white world, some of us, had our jobs out in the white community, we didn't really want to get too close to Malcolm.
It has been suggested also that this movement preaches a gospel of violence.
No, the black people in this country have been the victims of violence at the hands of the white man for 400 years. And following the ignorant Negro preachers, we have thought that it was godlike to turn the other cheek to the brute that was brutalizing us. And today, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is showing black people in this country that just as the white man and every other person on this earth has God-given rights, natural rights, civil rights, any kind of rights that you can think of when it comes to defending himself, black people we should have the right to defend ourselves also.
In August 1963, 250,000 Americans gathered for the March on Washington.
Malcolm came to us. He told us the story about the March on Washington. One thing I can say about Malcolm, anytime he told us something, he could back it up. He had an article, and he said, I'm going to tell you, I know what I'm talking about. It says, who pays the bills for civil rights? And it said, the angels are white. And what he went on to say was, you have to fight your battles. And it started in the street. But once you let them become integrated, it gets cool. And then he relates it to a cup of coffee that is hot, and as soon as you water it, put the milk in it, it cools down. And these analogies Malcolm used sometimes were funny, but they got home. They hit home.
Most of the people that we were organizing had heard also of Malcolm X, and and respected him and listened to him. And any time that he was going to be on, they made an effort to hear those speeches, and felt that he indeed understood what their problems were, and that they needed to be fought against. And I suppose not always nonviolently.
19 days after the March on Washington, a bomb blew apart the Sunday school of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. 20 people were injured. 4 little girls were killed.
Here you're talking about bombing a church and killing 4 little girls. And the feeling of anger and not being able to do something or not doing something was I remember was tremendous.
A lot of us sort of became dissatisfied because, and Malcolm really became somewhat dissatisfied. He never spoke of it, that we weren't doing anything to help our people who were being brutalized